evening is because I saw a team on the pitch that reflected my energy, my passion, my intensity, which is what I demand from the guys. And when they do that, it allows the talent to flourish, and it allows us to win games, even if tonight our football wasn't fantastic. We showed a totally different face this evening. We showed that. Look at the average height of the two teams this evening. The team we were able to put onto the pitch versus the height of their team, and they're so dangerous from set plays. But you see every set play, we had 3 players up on the halfway line. I don't know if that was spotted, but I thought our approach to defending set plays was excellent. It gave them a problem. They had to then leave players back. But even at the end, when they underloaded the top line, we didn't bring one more player back. We kept the 3 up on the halfway line all the way to the end of the game. So I thought, from many respects, it was the same Rapids we've seen this season. It was brave. It was courageous. It was bold. But I think if anyone noticed the difference tonight, I definitely think there was an increase in the mentality to force a win, to demand a win, to make sure there is nothing happening here that will stop us winning. And as I just said to the guys, we've got to bottle that, because on Saturday, when maybe the system changes back and the football reappears, it's not that that's going to win us that game. It's going to be a combination of the football plus making sure this mentality we showed this evening has to be a baseline. It has to be a foundation for us going forward.
On the Rapids 1-0 midweek victory over Minnesota United FC, I think they're called the Loons. The old USL team was called. Rapids defense gets the shutout. Nico Hansen, the starting goalkeeper this weekend. Thanks for listening to Rapids Rant. I am Don Pablo. You're in here for another, another class, another infotainment about the Colorado Rapids, especially their shutout victory after being themselves shut out the last couple of games. Rapids returning to above the playoff line in the standings. We'll go over those today. Also, upcoming schedule. Coach Wells said, talked about Salt Lake coming up. It is Salt Lake week again. And me, as a Rapids fan, I hope the Rapids can keep the cup for the third, Rocky Mountain Cup for the third consecutive season, of course. To get the draw on the road this weekend, that'll go a long way towards that. We'll talk about upcoming schedule. Rapids play 3 more matches, including a U.S. Open Cup match against San Jose, the leaders in the West, next week. And then, of course, a World Cup break for, their mid-season World Cup break. We'll talk about that, some thoughts on the World Cup break, how the Rapids are going to go into that with their mentality. They're going to lose a couple players to the World Cup, but luckily they don't have to travel that far, as the World Cup is in the United States this year, or just a couple time zones around the United States. Number one, I'm glad that I don't have to wake up at 3 a.m, 4 a.m. to watch World Cup matches, as I'm sure most people are. The last couple World Cups in Qatar and Russia, obviously weird time of day for those games. And, they kind of changed it to the last couple of World Cups where the final is at 12:30 Mountain Time, as always. And I like it. I like the Mountain Time zone, our sports schedule. We don't get too late. We don't go too early. But also, Mountain Time Zone. Listen to Mountain Time Sports Report. Mountain Time Sports Report on Twitch and YouTube live. We're live right now streaming. I do produce it a little bit and package it up, send it over to host emeritus Camberto. He posts it on the internet for us. Thanks to him for doing that. You can also find this on Blue Sky and TikTok. Search Don Pablo on TikTok or Rapids Rant. That'll show up. You can watch some fun Rapids videos or whatever I feel like posting there. Posted something about the NFL schedule reveal, but we'll talk about schedules more in a little bit. Rafa Navajo with the goal in Minnesota. Rapids ending the short-lived MLS career of James, the Colombian national, and actually got an Uber over to the stadium last week with the Colombian. We talked about him, and That was fun. My driver, and I think I turned him into a Rapids fan. He said he was definitely going to go to a Rapids match now since I talked it up, the experience, the game day experience, and how obviously maybe they're not what the crowds want. There's been a couple of bad weather games for the Rapids, but overall, I think it's a lot better than when I started doing Rapids Rant again. We brought it back in the year 2021. So, but just trying to bring out the Latin America flavor for the Colorado Rapids because I always talk about that marketing wise. I better, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And even though my name is Don Pablo Apodaca, I don't speak Spanish, but I can communicate a little bit and I can get the point across, of course. It did have to open up the Google Translate for one or two sentences with my Colombian taxi driver, Uber driver. But I got the gist around, and hopefully we can get that guy out to a game or two. And I'm doing my part for marketing the Colorado Rapids because this is a podcast, where we talk about the Colorado Rapids mostly, or whatever I want to talk about in the sports related areas. And Coach Wells talked about the mentality of the Colorado Rapids overall, and I thought, yes, as I always preach, subjects or players or whoever citizens take the mentality of their leaders, they take their leadership traits, and it funnels down to the players. And we talked about maybe a negative way last week, or this season, about how we're a little differently in the way of fouls and cards than we have been than the Rapids have been the last couple of years. Rapids in the top 3 of the Good Sportsmanship Award. Off the top of my head, I think they got 1 red card last year. That was Kevin Cabral when he was still on the team. And I couldn't think they've already surpassed that this year. And furthermore, before Minnesota, there's been bench yellows and a bench red. So the coaching staff has a little. My old coach used to say, fire in the belly. My old boss, fire in the belly. Got the fire in the belly. And I likened it to, and this isn't derogatory, it's just the way that they play. Right? It's an attitude, it's a focus, it's a and it worked this week. Rapids, obviously, people on the short week, they haven't scored a goal in the last 2 matches. They're coming down. They're going away to Minnesota on a Wednesday night. Just having played, they're going to do another match this weekend. Although there were some injuries and some other cards, and Wayne Frederick got in there, and I thought he played well. But the attitude and taking Will's attitude of, well, we might get a yellow, we might get a red every now and then, and to keep those 2 losses at 1-0 with the adversity the Rapids had, and then the game was already affected by the red in the last weekend, and the Rapids to come out in Minnesota and grind out the shutout in Minnesota, which I believe, and I didn't look it up, but just off the top of my head, I don't think the Rapids have a very good record there. So to do that on the road midweek when they played a bunch of matches in a row because of the condensed schedule and the World Cup break coming up, it was a hands down really good. It left me as a Rapids fan with a good feeling, and I'm sure it left the guys in the dressing room and everybody covering the team, surrounding the team with a good, following the team with a good, feeling about how the season's going after the last couple matches for the Rapids. And I said, Hava, I think he's more than halfway of beating the goal record for a single season. And he's getting up there as a goal scorer all time for Colorado for their career. So we're lucky to have him here. I believe he signed for 2 more years, coming off the extension he signed a couple years ago. I think he started on loan and then he came on a permanent on a permanent contract, if I remember correctly. So uh, I talk about getting your Harrington shirts, and you stood still while he's around because he might be, he's a World Cup player. He'll be on the national stage here in a couple of weeks. But going up the all-time goal scoring list for Hoffa, that's a big thing, and to be remembered. And several years now, and the kids that are young, that are maturing, they're going to be like, wow, Hoffa might score a goal. I need a Hoffa shirt. He's one of the better players, when we were younger. And obviously, it is Rapids legend Marcelo Balboa and even Drew Moore, even though we're about the same age, but he was playing for the Rapids, obviously, and matured when he matured as a player. We'll say that. And just remember these guys. And Hoffa, he's in a really good start to the season. I said it was the year of Yappy, but who had all the assists for Yappy's goals is more often than not Hoffa Navajo, the Brazilian homie, I guess we can call him. The Portuguese. No, I can't say that because he's not from Europe. But I just Rapids. Yeah, we're in the middle of the standings. That's kind of the same from the last couple of years. But if we get this attitude of toughness, of going in and beating somebody in Minnesota, last week's game against St. Louis and the previous game against Houston, there might have been some blemishes, but also we have to remember, not excuses, it's just how it is. It's a new coach. He's coming in here. He's living, 7 time zones away from where he was. It's a new country. Luckily, they speak the same language mostly, and it's a learning process for everybody. So, he's only been here it's middle of May, 5-6 months. He hasn't barely 2 seasons that he's been here, and it wasn't even cold this winter. So, maybe compared to England, but weather maybe had been to his advantage, and I hope he likes the sun because we've had some, bright mornings the last couple days here this week, especially, and hopefully that stays through. And we haven't had a weather delayed game at Dick's Sporting Goods Park this year, which is also a positive because the last 2 years ago, and then on the July 4th Fest a couple years ago, we had a bunch of weather delays, which nobody wants to see. People go home early, knuckleheads run on the field. Whatever. So it's still kind of early in his Rapids career, and you can see the attitude and some of the leadership that Coach Wells was talking about, and just if they called them straight edge kids when I was younger, and there's nothing wrong with being a straight edge kid, and being a straight edge kid set you up for success. But on the other hand, everybody makes mistakes. There's been a couple red cards early, and that obviously you don't want red cards. You don't want to play a man down. But if it shows the toughness of your team and it shows attitude and their I always say next man up, but and it is when you get a red card and you maybe sometimes lose a starter. Definitely a guy that player that gets on the field talent. I think the Rapids are, as of right now, trending in a positive direction inside the playoff picture at this point. I know it's kind of early, but every point counts, as we learned very well last year when they finished. The Rapids finished just out of the playoffs. But, the Rapids are not known. This is an old kind of reference, but they're not the Raiders of the MLS by any means. All right, they're not leading the league in cards or cautions or penalties as the Raiders were known. And it went with the whole theme of the Raiders and being pirates and stuff. With the recent resurgence in the news of pirates, by the way. But we'll leave that alone. They definitely get a lot more airtime in the last couple years, months. But whatever. By the way, Never mind. So, as far as this week, the Rapids, I think, grind it out till World Cup break. Then they're going to get a bunch of training time and on the field, and it's going to be like preseason again. They're going to get sick of each other playing against each other and not having other competition to go against. And it'll help. I mean, they probably, every team's going to be rusty when they come back from that, but you're going to know your teammates more. You're going to know your team better. It's going to be interesting because this is going to be right before summer transfers window, but and that's why this weird season slash the sprint season at the beginning of 2027 are going to be very different, and from 2027, 28, 29 going on those years when MLS changes to the world schedule, FIFA world schedule worldwide. It'll be interesting, but as far as the weird scheduling quirks, those are going to be largely going away, and I, for one, am excited about it. I look forward to the long form articles. Maybe next year, maybe 2 years, maybe next year when the schedule actually changes for those journalists to write, your 2,500, 3,000 words about what behind the scenes, what happened, and how that got there, because those kind of things interest me for sure, and hopefully they interest you. This is Rapids Rant. Speaking of the schedule, I want to give props to MLS because when they release a schedule, and the NFL did last night, Thursday night, midweek here, ahead of the Salt Lake game. There's actually surprises, right? In the NFL, you know who you're playing beforehand, before the season starts. You already know who you're playing. The schedule is the date and sometimes the time. I understand sports can be, the time is fluid more than not, but you basically know what time of the game is the game, because people try, NFL games are one-off events a week, and you get people. There's a lot of season ticket holders for the Broncos in Wyoming and in New Mexico, some in Utah. They travel, Sundays just for the game. They get up early and drive down here, and when, but they generally know the time. They generally know the time of the game. Is what I'm saying. You go to school, you get your class schedule. Like, you already know, right? You already know who you're playing or where you're doing. You got your math, your English, your science. I was big in gym, whatever that means. But then you get the schedule, like, you know what time it is, and you know the dates of when your particular events are happening. And the NFL, and I didn't even watch through the Broncos schedule release video, because they didn't tell me what week was what, like who's playing what week. Like, I know, and by the way, dang it, I'm gonna get in trouble with people. Look, man, just because I roast, it doesn't mean I don't love. All right, you gotta feel. Hopefully, the love comes through. It's hopefully healthy criticalness. All right. If you don't tell me, like, week 1 or week 2 what time the game is and who you're even playing that week, then I'm not watching the video. Period. All right. But why? I don't understand why you wouldn't. Like, this is the schedule. It's not. We already know who we're playing. Why wouldn't you just put it in chronological order? Number 1. All right. Number 2. I understand it takes a lot of resources, and the ones that go viral, the videos that go viral for a reason. But if we look at the ones that go viral, it's really The Tennessee Titans one from a couple years ago that got people on the street saying, "What team is this? Who's playing?" And that was a TikTok or a social media trend from before. Like who is this team? And they either a guy with his girlfriend or somebody that doesn't know sports that well, but they're on the fringe of knowing sports. Getting them, oh, that's the Falcon, that's the Tennessee, who knows what they were, but they get people and they like, yeah, that's the Texans or that's the Bulls or whatever, and I got it, and that turned into an amazing schedule release for the Tennessee Titans. All right, so it was already like a social media trend. They, cleaned it up a little bit. Was they made it, NFL broadcast quality, and boom, that went viral. That was an amazing schedule release. They didn't, and I know I said they did in chronological order. Let me just repeat that. So, and they did another good one this year, and I'll give props to them again for it's kind of a stadium thing where people look like the celebrity, and they go up and ask them, "Are you this person? Are you this person?" But they did it with people that were players or coaches or somebody connected to the teams, and then they they announced. And by the way, they announced the schedule in chronological order. Tennessee, good job. So that was good. That was funny. I liked how they took the viral, bit and turned it into the schedule release. Thank you. The Tecmo Bowl, not the Halo for the Chargers, made me laugh too. Although the journalist coach thing, whatever. I got thoughts on that, but that ain't for Rapid Rant. I appreciate the Halo one bringing back some nostalgia from my youth, and although whatever. So then I turned on the Broncos. I was waiting for them to go, and look, man, I understand. I love Peyton Manning. He brought me a Super Bowl. Super Bowl 50, one of the greatest nights of my life, especially from 2 years before that when it was, this one of the saddest days from the Seattle Seahawks Denver Broncos Super Bowl in 2013. But I don't, and they made the and I understand they made the joke about how he appears in everything, but hey, man, like, where's my schedule? We did 2 minutes on that. Where's the schedule? Who are we? We already know who we're playing. And then I thought it was funny. I'm 40 years old. I'm a man. I'm 40. But who clicks through channels anymore? Who clicks through channels to see what's on next? I would argue people don't do that. Especially people that are on social media. Like, I guess social media does that, but who does it specifically on a television? I guess that's brain rot from cable TV era. But who's going to relate to that now? Maybe people older than Peyton Manning. Maybe people Peyton Manning's age, 50 or however old he is. But so, I guess he gets the jokes that he's been on everything, and good for him. But I was kind of tired of seeing him on every commercial 8 years ago. And so they brought that back. Thanks for bringing that dead horse back. And and I thought it was more, these are 30-second commercials that we can be using to get people excited for the upcoming season. It's not like the Keep Talib thing. It was good. Let's do that when we're playing the Raiders, because Crabtree played for the Raiders, or the 49ers. Crabtree played for the 49ers, who Keep Talib ripped his chain off, that would make me laugh. That would be a good 30-second promo in stadium, get hype video. Right? So, I think all of them, the irony of Jake Plummer touting conspiracies at the airport when he owns mushroom, microdose psychedelic company, and how he's talked about going on spiritual journeys because of psychedelic drugs. it was not lost on me. Expanded your mind thinking about conspiracy theories at the Denver airport showing the blue demon horse, who I think we should definitely get rid of and put on some kind of maybe some kind of Brazil. I forget the name of Jesus statue in Brazil. We should put that up in the mountain somewhere for people, like a monument over there, because you can't really get out and hang out and like get a picture of the horse at DIA. Everybody sees it, but you can't really. And I forget the Brazilian. You guys know what I'm talking about. The big Jesus statue that's at the top of the mountain over there, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean in Brazil, the capital of Brazil, Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro. Excuse me. And I loved it. I love the Jake Plummer thing. But I have to admit, I stopped watching it after the first couple minutes because I'm like, where's the schedule? I already know who we're playing. Where's the schedule? And it kind of got ruined because we knew the Broncos are opening up against the Chiefs in the first week. But I'm like, I turn it off. I'm sorry. But the only reason I went back is my friends were talking about it. So I went back, and so we watched the whole thing. I already know who we're playing. Don, they put the schedule at the end. They put the outtakes at the end. The schedule was like rolling credits, and I'll stop being negative after this, I promise. Dude, who watches the credits when there's extra scenes in the outtakes? Who watches the credits? I would argue nobody, unless you know somebody there. Or you're waiting for another scene at the end. I'm watching the outtakes. I'm not watching the schedule. So I know it's hard. I know these teams expend a lot of resources on these videos. I watched probably more than I should, but if you don't actually tell me what the schedule is, imagine going to your like registrar at school and getting your schedule and just being like, well, you got math and English and science and government class and gym. You can show up whenever you want. You just have to go to like, all right. That's opposite of a schedule. Just saying. A quick look at the schedule from last week in the MLB midweek games. Well, Vancouver and San Jose, the battle of the top two teams in the West. That was in Northern California. They draw 1-1. Seattle and San Diego also draw 1-1. A couple other playoff teams. Kansas City. And I will curse. Like my friend and host emeritus Caberto, what happened, Kansas City? What happened? 6-0. They go to Portland. 6-0 drubbing by the Timbers. And you know what? Excuse me. This was last week. This was last weekend. Thank you, and you're welcome for me messing that up. Big opening. It was last weekend. Miami defeats Toronto in Toronto. Robin Fraser not getting off to the best start, in Toronto this year. And big game for them. Obviously, Messi coming to town, although they are Eastern Conference, so they're kind of guaranteed a Messi home game every year. And it just brings you back to the point of the Rapids and MLS. Like, we don't know who we're playing. MLS, Western Conference, Eastern Conference teams, you only know you're getting a handful of games. And I didn't even know what it was like to get Messi in town until Garber did his press conference at halftime of Inter Miami and Colorado at Mile High Stadium. But apparently he was talking about executives like presenting a plan for their Messi home game and how Rapids business manager, forgive me, I forgot her name, she knocked it out of the park. And I was like, awesome. That is awesome. She was hired last year. Obviously, this was one of the big projects that she had. The Rapids, killed it, for lack of a better term. Dominated this Messi game, 70,000+ people, second most attended MLS game of all time. So my point is, when there's a schedule release for the MLS, they actually give us the schedule And the Rapids did a really good job of doing that. And if it's viral, there's a reason it's viral. There's a reason, like, who are we marketing these NFL schedules for? Because I would argue the people that are Manning's age and who they marketed it for, they're already watching the games. All right. What's the biggest demographic that you sell to? It's like the 18 to 30-year-olds, right? You got to bring those guys in. How many of those guys are flipping through cable channels? I would argue they're not. They want TikTok. They want the TikTok thing. They want the YouTube or Twitter or Instagram. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes at most. So MLS a little better. And I'm sorry, and I understand that it's tough to come up with ideas to do commercials, which is what it really is, the scheduling situation. But we look forward to better in the future. And now I will actually get to the midweek games because those are the latest in MLS this week. We've already gone half an hour. I was talking about limiting this to 25 to 30 minutes. So we'll kind of get through these real quick. New York City went to Charlotte, home of the MLS All-Star game this year. Shut out Charlotte, 1-0. Miami, another 5 goals in Cincinnati. They beat Cincinnati 5-3. Chicago over DC United 3-1. Montreal, Portland 2-2 in Montreal. Nashville shut out New England. By the way, how's New England? Their scandals with their coaches. they got a lot, right? Bruce Arena killing him for San Jose right now. The Boston Celtics coach who Udoka in they crashed out of the playoffs in Houston, and that guy got fired basically. And now Mike Vrabel somehow still has a job, but not looking good for New England. And if the Patriots' fortunes turned the same way that New England Revolution after letting go of the haircut, I'm not sad. I wouldn't be sad. Whatever. Orlando beat Philadelphia 4-3. More on the Philadelphia Union later. We'll talk about their playoff positioning, and probably next week I'll talk about the draft picks and all that business. Kansas City actually got a victory on Wednesday night in Kansas over the Galaxy. St. Louis continues their winning ways, 2-1 over LAFC. Salt Lake in front of the big game this weekend. They're at home midweek, so they're going to be at home kind of an advantage for Salt Lake. They didn't have to go anywhere this past week, and hosting the Rapids Saturday night. And San Diego 5, Austin 0, and Seattle 3, San Jose 2. So San Jose, hopefully up and down. They're going to be tired. The Rapids are going to be tired when the U.S. Open Cup comes to Colorado midweek next week, facing the number 1 team in the West, number 2 team in the West, San Jose Earthquakes, as the Rapids look to move on in the U.S. Open Cup. And I'm very excited for that because I can't remember the Rapids being this deep in the Cup and hosting a home game, in a while, if ever. Maybe I don't remember. I've been following Rapids for 30 years. Other games to consider watching this weekend. In Montreal, Chicago goes to Montreal. Toronto goes to Charlotte. That's a battle that I'm interested in watching. City FC plays the Red Bull. So the New York teams are playing. Philadelphia hosts Columbus. And I don't know, Vancouver and Houston might actually be a pretty good match. Seattle, LA Gals. And Cincinnati, San Diego. What up? Nashville, LAFC on Sunday night. That's just on Apple TV, though. So it's not national TV game. Actually, national TV game, Seattle hosts LA Galaxy, as I said earlier. So that's the schedule for the MLS this weekend. I hope the Rapids can stay strong. I like their mentality, as Coach was talking about. We talked about that earlier in the show, of course. Man, soccer energy and news is picking up here ahead of the World Cup, and I, for one, am excited about it. Let's get to the standings for the MLS real quick. As I said, in the West, let's do the West first because it contains teams from the Mountain Time Zone. Watch us live on Twitch and YouTube, Mountain Time Sports Report, Mountain Standard Time Sports Report. Search for that. You can find us. We go live here at least once a week for Rapids. Also, find us on Blue Sky and Instagram, Rapids Rant Show. You can find that. Vancouver's 29, tied with San Jose. It's Seattle, and actually Salt Lake is a top 4 team this year, 6-1 at home. 6-1 at home. So the Rapids going into, as always, a tough place to play in Utah. In 5th place, LAFC, Minnesota right after that, Dallas with 19 points. In 7th, Houston in 8th with 18. Colorado, 16 points in 9th place, just above the playoff line. They can crawl closer. They can maybe get in the top 7, depending on what happens at Dallas and Houston this weekend. Rapids just need some points on the road. 2-5-1 away, so they're going to be playing their 9th game on the road as opposed to 5 games at home, which should be an advantage for later in the season when they don't have to go on a hectic travel schedule for Colorado. So maybe the standings are a little bit of a fraud, but and the Rapids get some more home games. Hopefully they'll rise for that. But the good news is 23 goals plus 3 goal differential, and the Rapids were hovering, negative or even like 1 or 2 above. So, and they're already scoring more this year. The last couple of weeks hasn't been like that, but I look forward to, as Coach was saying in the press conference, they're going forward. They didn't actually have to put an extra defenseman in at the end of the match when they were going for the shutout. He said they kept the offense up top, and we're still going for that second goal the whole game. Happy the Rapids got a shutout. Nico Hansen handling business while Zach Steffen dealing with, I believe it's a shoulder injury. Don't quote me on that. So we'll see who starts Saturday in Salt Lake. Maybe Zach just got the rest to be ready for Saturday's match. It's San Diego, LA Galaxy just outside the playoff picture with 16 points. Portland and Austin, 12th and 13th. St. Louis in 14th, and Kansas City. And there's been a lot of articles about Kansas City, like, need to reset and everything. I'm like, they already reset. This is after reset. Negative 22 goal differential for Kansas City, so it could be a lot worse, Rapids fans. Could be a lot worse. I'll take middle of the table with hopes of going up, but not resetting. And Kansas City, after having their manager for such a long time, they're trying this year. But the good news is, let's look at the Eastern Conference. Nashville in first, 27 points. Miami right there. Man, and Nashville's only given up 8 goals on the season in 12 matches. That's pretty good, huh? Miami, of course, they've already played 9 games away ahead of them opening their stadium, and they're in second place, so they're pretty good. Rapids gave them a pretty good matchup. The show for that game, the Rapids entertainment value factor that they have this season, showed out on that. Miami actually hasn't won a home game. They're 0-1 loss and 3 draws at home. So, I mean, that probably will change. New England Revolution, as I said, they had a rough one last week, but here they are, 3rd place in the East, Chicago 4th. City FC and the Red Bull, 5th and 6th, tied at 18 points. So that game, it's going to be a hotly contested game. Actually, probably will watch that. I'm excited for that ahead of Rapids away television that I'll be checking out. Who knows when the Avalanche Kroenke team starts the Western Conference. I think it's on Monday. The Western Conference Finals in the NHL. I think it's on Monday versus Vegas Golden Knights, and the Rapids 0-1 from a couple years ago. When the Rapids, I think they won the first two and they got swept 4 in a row. It was something like that. So DC United 7th, Cincinnati 8th, Charlotte 9th, Toronto and Montreal just outside the playoff picture. Orlando 13, Columbus 12, Atlanta 10, and Philadelphia. They got to win, but they still are holding the wooden spoon. And I'll elaborate more on this in the next Rapid Rant because I've been going for too long. But if don't trade your number one picks 3 years out. The Nuggets might have to deal with this. The Avalanche dealt with it, but they actually are on the positive side because they got Atlanta Senators pick all those years ago. I believe it was Cale Makar they drafted with that one. But Philadelphia, last place in the league. Colorado Rapids own their draft picks. They own their whole draft. So as of right now, I believe Rapids will be getting the number one pick from Philadelphia in MLS Super Draft 2026. All right, there you go. I got stories from going to Utah the past couple years, although they're updated the area around their stadium. But just another, this is the rivalry. This is the big one for the Rapids. Of course, Rocky Mountain Cup. I know the supporters group. I'm still in the supporters group. I get the emails all the time. And I will be riding a bus somewhere else this year, so I don't really ride the bus that more, but we'll see what happens with airplanes and the cost of gasoline. Maybe I'll be riding the bus more. Maybe I'll go to Utah again. Although I like riding trains. If you've ever done the Santa Fe Railroad down there, or even the Georgetown Railroad, I would around here around Colorado, check those out. But as far as Salt Lake, Rapids don't have the best record there. Looking to change that. They finally won there a couple of years ago. I'll take a draw on the road. I hope for a victory. I hope the Rapids bring their entertaining style to the Great Salt Lake, the Beehive State. There's a nickname they could have given them instead of Real Salt Lake. How about the Salt Lake Bees from, what is that, Major League 3? Anyway, I think that's their actual name too. So, that's an old man movie reference that, Major League 1 and 2, Cleveland Indians, Major League 3, Scott Bakula getting paid. Anyway, I am Don Pablo. This is Rapid Rant. Thanks for listening. Find us, as I said, Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube, search Rapid Rant. You'll be around there. I'm on TikTok. My name is Don Pablo there. I want to say, if you've listened this far, God bless you. And vaya con Dios.